Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. Today is May, what is it, 28th, and it is the year still 2025. And my goodness, what a year this is. And as more people keep coming in, you guys just settle in, sit back, and just receive the transmission. And today, this is episode 199. I jumped the gun a couple of weeks ago because I said it was episode, I think 200 back then, but it wasn't. It was 190, 190. So we've had a few more since, but today is 199. And I'm super excited to continue on what we started 2 weeks ago. And this is, as always, we're in the Course in Miracles. And let's see, here we go. Let everybody else in. We're in the Course in Miracles, and we are in chapter 3. The title of it is The Innocent Perception. Inside of the innocent perception, we are in section number 7, which is the difference between creating versus the self-image. And this is such an important thing to understand because God created us to create. As you have been hearing for all these years, and welcome to those of you who've joined since we started, as you've been hearing from me specifically, but if you've been a student of the course, you know that we have to understand the difference between creating and making. Making is the ego's making its own self-image. You know how we have a saying in this world, you got to make it. You got to make it to the top and you're nobody if you don't make it. Well, that's quite appropriate because ego makes things, and anything that you make, you can unmake. But anything that is created cannot be discreated if it's something that God has created. We have to get really clear about the distinction between the two. God created us to create, and since we have been humans on this planet, incarnated in the third dimension, we first came in, we enter at the highest frequency. Every child that is born comes in at vibing pretty high frequency. And then we get pulled down into a very limited story of who we are. And one of the very important things about this particular section, as we saw 2 weeks ago when we looked at chapter or I'm sorry, paragraph 1, and I'm not going to read all of it because those are already in those other transmissions, but we need to understand the power that we have. Every system of thought must have a starting point. Everything starts somewhere. When we start with God's thought system, a child comes in totally, completely, here I am. Let me express myself. Let me just be me. And they come in and they are themselves. Little by little by little, because the parents are already in a lower frequency. And the reason the parents are in the lower frequency is they too came in as a child at the highest frequency, and we had our parents who little by little conditioned us into the lower frequencies. Everybody who has been here before in an unconscious world, before this massive shift that we're in, where we're ascending, everybody that comes in is going to be pulled down to the frequency of the collective. A few will remain at a little higher frequency because maybe they came in with parents who had not quite gone down that far, or their parents might have been at a lower frequency, but they were not as controlling. And those children were able to play with their gifts, with their intuitive knowingness, with their connections to source, and they were able to remain at a little higher frequency. And inevitably, those children then move into school, and in the school systems, they meet other children who come from whatever frequency their households are in, and they then can begin to make fun of the ones who are in the higher frequency. And you know what's higher frequency? Freedom. Number one, your freedom. You just want to be you because you know who you are because you can feel that frequency within you. And we call those people black sheeps. You want to be you. The other thing is you're creative. You cannot just receive information from a teacher, from the preacher, from the media, from the government. You cannot just receive information and regurgitate it. That's not who you are. You are a creative being. You're here to express yourself. In years past, that decades, centuries, millennia past, when we are being educated, most children lose their ability to be creative. I remember my daughter was in third grade, and I cannot remember the teacher's name. Let me go back to kindergarten, first and second. She had a teacher who was absolutely amazing. She encouraged these kids to be creative, and my daughter, who wasn't necessarily going to be a an artist in the form of paintings and things like that, still loved to color. She loved to express herself through art. And that particular teacher was amazing. No matter what the kids did, she always would encourage what they had done, how creative it was, ask them questions about, well, why did you paint the tree purple? She was curious about what the kids were doing. And the kids were in this wonderful state of creativity. Then she retired. I believe she had her first child, and she retired to stay home with the kids. And then this other lady came in who we went from this one teacher who was I want to say she was in her early 30s to this other teacher who was in her 60s. This teacher in her 60s came in a very, very set ways. And that's who my daughter had in third grade. And one of the assignments that she was given, that the kids were given, was to paint. They were going to paint elephants. When Lauren turned in her drawing of the elephant, she drew a pink elephant. We had just watched a movie or a video. I can't remember. It's been, quite a while, 30 some odd years. And in that elephant, it was about pink elephants, or in that movie, or that maybe it was a book that we read. I can't remember. But we were talking about pink elephants in our household. Well, Lauren went and she painted a pink elephant. And she turned in her elephant. Everybody turned in their elephants. And the teacher said to her, "This is all wrong. Elephants are not pink, they are gray. Sit back down and do it again." From that day forward, my little girl didn't want to draw anymore. At home, she would stop coloring. The paints dried out, the crayons just sat there. Eventually, I just had to give them away because she just was not going to do that. And it was at the time, I didn't have the consciousness that I have now. I didn't start my journey until she was about 12 years old. She was 8 years old when this happened. And this is, if I knew then what I know now, I would have said to her, "Listen, this is a teacher's opinion. That pink elephant is absolutely wonderful. She wanted a gray elephant. She did not give you the instruction to give her a gray elephant to begin with, which you would have done, but you thought you could paint whatever you want, and you can at home. You can paint whatever you want." I would have said that to her if I was a conscious parent. But here's what I said to her as an unconscious parent. She's the teacher and she knows better. So you do whatever it is that she wants. You're just going to get the grade. Never sat to really get to the root of her feelings. Never encouraged her. Why? Because I too was unconscious. I had been conditioned to believe that mother, father, teacher, preacher know better than we do. So humanity, who is created to create, little by little is brought down in frequency. And what it means to come down in frequency is we shut down our true divine senses. We just kind of pull them in close to the vest. And though that knowingness kind of gets turned into this, tiny little bit of information, that like a box that we store in the attic or the basement, whenever, the cellar, wherever you may store things, a box maybe of things that you inherited from your grandmother that you're never going to use. So they get pushed back and pushed back. And year after year, that box ends up somewhere in the corner. And you don't find it until you move or you die, and then your family finds it, after you're gone. That is what happens to our expanded self. The knowingness of who we are gets contracted and it gets stored away. It gets put away within us, deep, 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 deep within. That as the years go, we build layers, and like that box in the storage, you put other boxes in front of it, you to the point that you forget that that box, that tiny little box of whatever grandma gave you is back there. So it gets shoved away. You forget about it over the years. You forget about your true nature. You forget about your true desire to paint, to express yourself, to be an artist, to be a singer, to be a whatever it is that you want to be. Because you begin to build the layers to protect yourself from showing your true self, because when you were showing your true self, inevitably somebody shut you down. Somebody told you, "Who do you think you are, Missy? What do you really think you're talented?" You heard musicians don't make any money. So you build this image of, well, what is it that I need to be? And what is it that I need to become for me to do life right, for me to become successful, for the world to see how good I am, how wonderful I am, how perfect I am. And that truth of who you are stays buried deep inside. It doesn't go away. It cannot go away like the little box in the attic. It cannot go away. You just don't see it because you build so many layers of stuff in front of it, boxes in front of it. So what is happening to humanity right now? It's after thousands of years of slowly descending from being who we are, our authentic selves, we are in the process of returning to the truth of who we are. But like that box in the cellar or in the attic, you can't just go grab it and pull it out. You got to move the boxes in the front. So we do the work of taking what is present in the moment, and it's always easy to see what that is. The irritation is the invitation. When you bump up against the thing that you don't like, that bothers you, that annoys you, that frustrates you, those are the indicators of what it is that you have done to build a wall that blocks you from knowing who you really are. Because who you are is a loving expression. You are the light of the world, as the course tells us. What you are is joyful, it's innocent, like that little child that goes into art class. Who you are is here to express itself because the soul does not know limitations. It's unlimited. It does not know frustration. It's pure joy. It does not know judgment because it is pure acceptance. So what has happened? We have built blocks and layers and layers and layers and put boxes in front of the real essence of who we are that allow us to be judgmental because we are disconnected from our joy. Not really disconnected because it's always there, but we only express it when we feel safe. You're not going to be too joyful if it's going to upset somebody. If your mom and dad are depressed or dad's an alcoholic like I had, I learned you tip around dad. You do not be joyful around dad because if you're laughing and that disturbs dad who is in the middle of being drunk and when my dad would get drunk, he was one of those drunks that he literally would sit at the table. He got drunk and sat at the table. He would drink and sit at the table and just a bump on the log, depressed, miserable, just he would just sit there. He wasn't reading, he wasn't writing, he wasn't watching TV, he would just sit there. And you do not go disturb dad because if you bother dad, he would get angry. And in his anger, he would my dad was not a violent person. I only really remember him spanking me a few times. Um, but he wasn't a violent person. But if he got angry, you could feel that anger. You just didn't want to feel that anger. And not only that, you didn't want to make mom mad because mom would hear the brunt of dad if we were disturbing him. Why can't you keep those kids quiet? So we were very, very good at withholding our joy because we didn't want to disturb mom or dad, and we didn't want to make mom mad because mom was the one that would take the belt. So we learned at a very, very young age. My parents got divorced at 10. I was so well trained by that time. So I probably learned that, 2, 3 years old. I don't remember a time when my dad wasn't just about every night drinking beers and getting drunk. So I learned to withhold my joy. So we don't express the joy that we have because we're watching what's going on out there. Am I safe? That creates the judgment. Am I safe? Is it safe here? Yes or no? Is this a good place for me to be myself or a bad place? If I am myself, I'm going to get in trouble. So then don't be myself. We tell ourselves this over and 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 over again. If we were to put the boxes in front of that little box, that little jewel in that we got from grandma in the attic, we would have thousands upon thousands. I would say 10,000 boxes in front of it. You know how long it would take us to get to that box? If we had to move, to physically move one box at a time. And these are not little boxes, these are big boxes of judgments, big boxes of experiences, of situations, memories when we couldn't be ourselves. So it takes a while to remove those layers, those layers, those layers. That is why it says every system of thought must have a starting point. We have to get to the starting point. Where did it start? Sorry, my computer, I just bumped it. There is a starting point. We have to do the work. Course in Miracles tells us we are going to use time to undo what was done in time. It took me 40 plus years of building all of those layers. Well, I'm on my journey 25 years and I'm still removing layers. It takes a while. Most spiritual people one and done. Oh, I read the course and now I know everything. We are upon a time right now, the time of ascension, where if your ego has been spiritualized, if you already think that you know it all, but you're still judging, you're still in fear, you're still thinking that you're better than or less than somebody else, your ego got spiritualized. You can recite things, you can say beautiful things, maybe you even written a book or you get quoted for the knowledge that you have. But if you internally are still experiencing discomfort, well, as the characteristics of a teacher of God show us, you are being dishonest because you're not being consistent with expressing the truth, living it, knowing it, and being it go together. That is what brings us to mastery. That is how you know someone is a teacher of God. Because they're teaching what God is, which means that they're being love. If there are judgments and fears and resentments and worries and concerns and controlling things, you're not there yet. Now, this is kind of a funny thing to say. You are there because you have that truth within you, but you're not living it. So you are in a delusion, meaning you are pretending still to be what you're not, which is really not a whole lot different than someone who's totally unconscious. Just we have more knowledge. We have the knowledge, but we got to implement it. It's like I know that that box is in the attic, but if I don't implement the actual work of moving all those other boxes from the front, I need to be honest. It's there, but I'm not using it. I don't have it. I don't even remember what it looks like. It's not in my hands, but I own it. It's in my house. So, yes, there's honesty that I still am the child of God, but there's a dishonesty in that I'm not accessing that because I'm operating from all of the layers that separate me from the truth of who I am. So, being able to understand, we got to get to the starting point. And one of the other things in paragraph number one, it talked about is that everything begins with either making or creating, but it states that every thought system is powerful. It says it is a mistake to believe that a thought system based on lies is weak. My daughter, thinking that she is not a good artist, that she's going to get in trouble for painting, that was not a weak system. That shut her down creatively in many ways for many, many, many years. It's a very powerful system. Lies and truth are almost equally in power. Where the truth is 100% powerful, lies are 99% powerful. And that is something that we have to understand. That 1% not powerful is the beginning of the crack that allows for the awakening that causes us to want to come to know the truth. And listen, I've been coaching now for, let's say I've been on my journey 25 years. I've been coaching for almost 20 years, 18 to be more exact. I watch people who enter this journey and they want to get there. But the commitment to doing whatever it takes to get there, it's usually not that many. The Course in Miracles tells you that. If you go into the manual for teachers, it tells you all want to experience, or it says, I think many want to experience liberation, freedom, knowing truth, but few will get there because it requires so much dedication. You have to be honest. Are you questioning every irritation? Every time you get upset about something, that is not your authentic self. That is your ego self that is inconvenienced by whatever is happening based on what the ego thinks should be happening if it could control circumstances. But because it cannot control anything in a world of shifting experiences, in a world of temporary chaos, you can't control everything. We have the experience of controlling a few things for a little while, but inevitably everything will eventually be out of our control. And when the ego doesn't get its way, then it's going to be irritated, it's going to be annoyed, it's going to be upset. So we have to learn to understand that dealing with the ego, we're dealing with a very powerful thought system. And here's how you know it's powerful: with the need to be right. Humanity, right now, in this moment, is being separated into two categories. Those, and it's kind of interesting, but we'll get to the nuances in a minute, but those who feel this calling to freedom, and they know internally they're right, that because it's a birthright. If it's a birthright, you're right, but you're right, capital R. This is God's capital R. It's the ego who needs to be right, little r. I need to be right, and I'm going to bulldozer over anybody, because to be right means that is what allows me to know that I'm somebody, that my whole identity is defined by that. This is all the boxes that are blocking you from getting to your treasure. This is your treasure. And guess what? You know when you are right, capital R, because it's your birthright, because you don't need to defend it. That little box in the attic doesn't need to defend that it is there. It is there. These other boxes, though, they're going to defend their position because they're there. And the last one, of course, it's the first one that I see. It's the most important one, or whatever it might think. When we have a thought that we are not what we are as God created us, that we're not good enough, that we're not strong enough, that we can't be our authentic selves, that we have to conform to make the peace, that is a very powerful thought system that creates, well, it doesn't create, it makes the ego. Because making is stuff that can be unmade. It makes the ego. But your true essence is always going to be there. But you got to get to it. You got to get to that starting point. Last week, we looked at that paragraph 2. You cannot resolve the authority problem by depreciating the power of your mind. Because see, our mind, our ability to think, our ability to know, our ability to create, we have a powerful mind. It's not the brain. The brain is a physical aspect of ourselves that with neurological pathways creates pathways with habitual thinking. This is why you have to teach the little kids the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. You know, because it creates a rut, and then you start moving down that path. And once you start thinking something, this is the way that it is, by gosh, you're going to be right. And it takes a lot of effort to create another neurological pathway, not because you can't. And as a matter of fact, science has shown us that the brain stays elastic until you die, but you have to keep it. You have to keep it elastic. You have to do the exercises, do the crossword puzzles, read, expand your mind, do things that you haven't done before, so that you can shift from here to there. No different than your body. You got to do different movements to stay flexible. Well, the same thing with the brain that holds what the mind thinks. So we've got the thinking, the imagination, and those things begin to form the paths of the brain. So do not for 1 second think that your mind doesn't have power. It is so, so powerful. And then it goes on to tell us that we read last week, you know, that the devil, we've been taught about the devil, is a frightening concept because he seems to be extremely powerful and active. Well, we've been taught, most of us, I grew up in the Catholic Church and in traditional Christianity, and there is a devil. There's God and there is the devil. Now, the Course tells you that there is no devil. Devil is a block to God. And you have to be the one who thinks that there's a block to God. You have to be the one who decides to put those boxes between you and God. And we put those boxes in the way, we put those layers, those blocks in the way by thinking that there is a power as powerful as God that can get in the way. That's why, in the very beginning of the Course in Miracles, in the introduction, it says nothing real can be threatened. If you know God, nothing can threaten it. Why? Because nothing unreal exists. God did not create the devil. If the devil is to exist, God would have to create it because God's the creator of all things. But God does not create devil. Devil is nothing more than the thoughts that you are not who you are as God created you. And we have to understand where those stories came from. Well, who made up those stories? Nope, not anybody who was vibing high frequency. Who made up those stories? Those who begin to move down into the lower frequencies and they move into the realm of pride and think that they know better and are descending with an egoic consciousness that begins to tell us about good and bad, about good and evil, and God and Satan, and stories that allows for the lower vibing belief systems of separation, of the haves and the have-nots. These people know and these people don't know. So let's get into paragraph number 3. We have discussed the fall or separation before, but its meaning must be clearly understood. The separation is a system of thought real enough in time, right here in the year 2025, we really believe that, the fall of man and the Adam and Eve story, though not in eternity. So when we think about what's going on right now, who we are as we're working through this process of removing the obstacles to what God created, we are in what appears to be like a little bubble in time. However, time, there is no time. What we are is eternal. But when we believe that we're separate from God, we literally enter into separation because our mind is believing God is there and I am here. That creates the experience of time. And what is so interesting is that if you were to take this spiral and you were to look at it from the side, yeah, it looks like we went down and then we got to work our way back up. But if you look at it from the top, it's nothing but one circle. You can kind of collapse it and it's all right in there. So it's like we have wound ourselves in pretty tight and we just have to unwind ourselves. It doesn't take time to unwind ourselves if you understand the truth of who you are. All it is just a decision to no longer believe in separation. But when you open up the circle and you turn it into a spiral, we have been given the gift of time to work our way back to the truth of who we are. Again, the jewel is in your house. It's already there, but it's there in the now. It's already in the attic, but you have the gift of time to take your time to get to it and be able to enjoy it. So the same thing with our mind. Our mind believes we have separated from God. So we are giving our mind time to return to the truth of who we are, and it takes however long it takes. So sentence number 3, all beliefs are real to the believer. Have you ever had a thought that you didn't believe in and you forced yourself to say, well, this is the truth. I know it's not true, but I'm going to make it the truth and it's going to be right. We don't do that. We are very quick. This is right, this is wrong. When we are little though, and we don't know any better because we're not born with ethnicity, and we're not born with a language. We're not even born, we don't even have a name. We come with nothing. We come a blank slate. Then we begin to get programmed. We begin to receive information. You're giving your name, you're giving your parents' religion. Were any of you asked when you were 1 year old, do you want to go to this particular church or would you like to go to the other church? Which one of us as a baby was asked, do you want to get baptized or not? I wasn't asked that. I was taken through the rituals. Nobody ever asked me. They didn't even ask me, do you want to have the name Lina? Thankfully, I do like it. But nobody asked for my permission. Nobody asked for me to give my opinion. So we are programmed. We're given what they know. And we take what the teachers say because we're indoctrinated into the authority is outside of us. And if you want to really go it deep into authority, which was in the section before this, it's section number 6, and we started in episode 187 all the way through 196. We covered what is the authority problem. And the authority problem is what the Course in Miracles says is the one problem that we have. Because we have given power to external authorities, we think they know better than we do. We have totally, completely created a world of suffering for ourselves. And when they do teach us about God, God is never inside, even though that's what Jesus said. And didn't he die on the cross, for us to know the truth? But conveniently, even though Jesus told us that God is within and that we're one with God, the church tells us that God is on a cloud somewhere and has painted a picture of a human deity that somehow reminds me a lot of my father. I better not upset it or it's going to be, throwing thunder at me. So it's like it's a dysfunctional father that unconscious humans with power have created because it was a very good way to control all the other unconscious humans who are born powerful, but we don't want them to have power over us. So we dumb them all down. We bring them all down in lower frequency. So all the beliefs are real to the believer. If your grandmother told you that, you're going to believe it. If your mother told you that and you loved your mother, you're going to trust her. If you hated your mother and she said something to you, you're going to believe that she was wrong and you're really going to believe that. It is going to be true for you no matter what. So the work of waking up is takes a while because you got to look at every belief that you hold. Why? Because no human beliefs were here before God created creation. So we got to get to the starting point. The starting point is God. What does God know is true? Everything else has been made up ever since. And when we're defending things that have been made up ever since, we are going to be operating with our ego, defending what we believe is true, because all beliefs are real to the believer. And one of the reasons it's so difficult to let go of our beliefs, even though they're wrong, but we hold on to them as they're true. It was totally a mistaken belief that I was going to go to hell. And those of you who've heard my story know that when my mother died, that my fear was I was going to go to hell. That's what sent me on a spiritual journey. And it started with trying to understand what is hell, who made up hell. I had, and I'm not going to say, oh, I was so smart and figured out I needed to undo the hell story. I came into this lifetime knowing that I was going to break free from that lie. And it's the first thing. I was like, I need to find out, is there really hell? Because I'm really scared I'm going to go to hell. My mom's there because I knew my mom very well. We were best of friends. I know the things she did that were not good, that would be sin. Um, so I went down a path of learning about the formation of the Catholic Church and where it started. So I went to the beginning of that and to the beginning of the New Testament, to the beginning of the books that got picked and learned the politics about the books that were left out, the gospels that were left out, the teachings that were not included. And it was like, holy cow, I had this moment where it was like whoosh, my brain exploded and all those boxes that had been in the attic, it's almost like they magically, a bomb went off and half of them burn out. And all of a sudden I had this big opening. And that was part of the beginning of coming to know who I really am because I was beginning to learn the truth about God. And as I'm learning the truth about God and I'm following a path that then Jesus started guiding me, because that's when I started hearing the voice of Jesus, it was to take me back to the truth of who I am as he taught 2000 years ago. But I had to go on this journey to go to other authorities who told me the truth, these scholars who said, well, this is how it happened, but they weren't intending in controlling me. They were just giving me information. So it was easy to take it. And then I had to deal with the emotions that came up of, oh, wow, my parents lied to me about religion. My grandmother took me to church, made me do the catechism and the communion, and all the I had to work through the sadness that I had, the anger, the disappointment, the judgment. Why didn't she find out the truth before she starts indoctrinating me with things that are not true? Why didn't my father question these things before they started regurgitating this stuff? So it took me a while. I'm going to say it took me a couple of years to work through my fear of doubting these people that I trusted, and then my liberation in realizing they were telling things that were not true. Because then I found out they were trained like I was trained, but it wasn't their journey to find out that truth and discover it. It was mine, so I could teach it to my children differently. And so much healing has to take place. Again, we have time to be able to work through this. Sentence number 4 says, the fruit of only one tree was forbidden in the symbolic garden. We've all heard about the forbidden truth. Don't eat of the forbidden truth. Adam and Eve, don't touch that tree. All right. But God could not have forbidden it, or it could not have been eaten. God, if God said you're not going to eat that tree, that fruit, you wouldn't be able to eat it. Because if God says don't do it, it would have been made in such a way that it was not possible to do something that God says you cannot do. This is the beginning of freedom. When you begin to understand what God is, so nothing real can be threatened. God is not going to put anything that is going to threaten its children that it created for freedom, that it created for happiness, that it created to extend the kingdom. It would not have created something to create an obstacle to the children that it created to extend the kingdom. Do you get how amazing that is? How many of us as parents deliberately put obstacles in our children's way? How many? Some do. Some do, but they're not operating from high frequency. Those who put obstacles in front of their children, those mothers who sell their children into slavery because, they're going to get money, and they need the money to feed the other 5 kids in the house, or they need the money for whatever reason. They do some things that put some big obstacles in those kids' ways. But even that is part of a process that our Father God made sure everyone who has obstacles in the third dimension does not have those obstacles keep them from returning to who they are into that fifth dimension of consciousness. Meaning every single one of us that has obstacles in this 3D world, we can overcome every one of them. And if we don't overcome them in this world, they still do not block our eternal soul from transcending this world and expressing itself and experiencing itself in total freedom after the death experience. So God has made sure that everything that its creation needs to extend the kingdom is there. So God would not have put in a forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden where we can have anything we want except for that one. No real loving parent does that to their child. That's just not the way that it works. If God knows his children, sentence 6, and I assure you that he does, Jesus speaking, would he have put them in a position where their own destruction was possible? How can God create in its image when God is infinite? And is it going to create in its image something that is finite and it's going to be destroyed? When we begin to apply logic, this is why to get high, very high frequency is reason. You have to reason with God. You've got to begin to think with God and then eventually like God. When Jesus said the Father and I are one, it's because he was knowing what God knows. And we have access to God's knowingness. We just have to remove all those boxes, all those obstacles that we have built to the awareness of the truth that is within us. But to be able to get to that place where you know God is within, and to feel good about that and to feel the liberation that comes with that, the empowerment that comes with that, you can't be afraid of God. And what has most religions done, and all religions have a sprinkling of the truth of God's love. They have to. Otherwise, they wouldn't be around this for so many hundreds or thousands of years. But they also include fear. So they've got the jewel in there, but they put so many obstacles to get to the jewel. And the only reason that is done is because it was created by humans who needed to give you a path to get to what they knew. And the only reason they needed to give you a path and make you jump through, hoops like you're a trained monkey is because they had not experienced the love of God. Anybody who experiences the love of God cannot do things to make it difficult for another to remember. It's just not possible. They walk among us like Jesus did, wanting people to know that there are only two simple rules, if you want to call them that, commandments, if you want to call them that, guidelines, or whatever you want to call them, to feel the love of God, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. Love God, but you cannot just love God. It is your love for others and yourself that is what allows you to feel the love of God. Those things are so intertwined. Jesus broke them down. It appears to be two, but it's only because the human egoic mind cannot comprehend that every time that you love another because you have found you've learned to love yourself, meaning you no longer lie to yourself by thinking you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, you're less than, you're better than. When you don't have those beliefs, you're experiencing self-love. You're loving who you are, not because you have to love yourself, but because you don't have obstacles that you're believing that are not true about yourself. So all that is happening is the knowingness of who you are is what you are operating from. Like my little daughter knew when she was coloring. She, in her own little mind, she didn't have to label herself an artist. She knew she was just creating until somebody told her she wasn't an artist. And then boom, 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 all the beliefs kick in. Well, all those beliefs have to be looked at until we can come and remember the truth of who we are. And when we decide, when we accept I am as God created me, you cannot help but love others, which is why the course is set up in such a beautiful way as we begin to break the illusion of separation. This belief that we have fallen so far from God because we ate this fruit and damn, Eve, look at what you've done, messed us up. Men are the smartest ones, but how smart was Adam if he lets the Eve go and take so the stories that have been created to make it so convoluted to get to the simplicity of the message, it is a metaphor. Don't eat of the lie. That's all that it is. The fruit of good and knowledge that's all that it is. We took on knowledge, we took on information that was made up by others instead of relying on the truth that is of God that is already within us. And it happens because we're babies. That's what happens until we move into the new earth. And actually, it's already happening because there are a lot of people who are living in the consciousness of the new earth, the consciousness of the happy dream. When you know the truth, you don't teach your children that God is outside of them. My little grandbabies, I am telling them all the time, God is in you. You treat your little sister, I tell Ryder, like you want to be treated. You don't like it how your little friend Georgie treated you? Well, then don't treat another person that way. Don't you upset Arthur. Don't or actually my language is very specific. Arthur is upset by something that you did. So, would you like to do things differently so that your friends can feel comfortable around you, so that they can feel like they can play with you? Would you like it if Arthur did something like that? How would you feel? Not Arthur made you feel or you made Arthur feel, because nobody makes us feel anything. All of our feelings come from within. Nobody can make you feel bad, sad, unworthy. Those are all agreements that we make internally, and then we externalize them. Why? Because the ego has to find somebody to blame. And if it doesn't blame you and turn you into a victim and depressed victim, then it's going to blame somebody else. And then so you can feel vindicated. They did it to me, and you can operate inside of that victim story, but they're the ones to blame. So it is not possible. If you think it is, and you're so misunderstand it, so misguided. God did not put any obstacles in our way. God did not put anything that could destroy us in our way. What has gotten in the way are beliefs that we have made up. That's why we got to get to the starting point. Who came up with this story of hell? It's all made up. That story wasn't there until somebody came up with it. Who made up the story that we have royal people in this world? There were no royals thousands of years ago before royalty was started. There were no kings. There were no emperors. That all started somewhere. And we have to get to the starting point of every belief system if we are going to undo it. Because the mind it has to recognize, humanity has existed long before that. If it wasn't there before that, who made it up and why? And if we're willing to ask the why, we will find that most of the beliefs that have been created, actually all beliefs that have been created that have to do with control, were created by somebody who was listening to the voice of their ego, not to the voice of God. Because God created us in freedom. And when we know God, freedom is natural for you and for all beings. Why? Because you do unto others as you want them to do to you. You would love your neighbor the same way you love yourself. You wouldn't imprison your neighbor if you're not yourself in prison. You wouldn't limit them if you yourself were not limited. Because if you don't know that, why would you show that to somebody else? So we've got to really understand what has happened here. We've got to get to the understanding of how our innocent perception has been blocked, and how what God created versus our own image of ourselves handed down through millennia, these hand-me-down beliefs that we've been wearing. I don't like wearing hand-me-down clothes. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we operate with hand-me-down beliefs and we never question them. We never question them. And that is a sign of somebody who is just following, external authority. You told me to believe that, and that's what I'm going to believe. Thankfully, humanity is waking up and not operating by what they're being told. Sentence number 7. The forbidden tree was named the tree of knowledge. Yet God created knowledge and gave it freely to his creation. Do you see how we have been so confused? We've been told that the forbidden tree was a tree of knowledge. So it's like somehow don't question it because it's the tree of knowledge. That's where all knowledge comes from. Well, who planted that tree? Where did that tree come from? Let's get curious and really become uh, just like little children. Wonder about everything. Where did that, why? My little kids, little grandbabies, little grandson, always asking why. We have been part of the indoctrination, part of the control, to believe in the tree of knowledge. You don't question its knowledge. You don't question anything there. But what is God's knowledge? How about we go to what God has to say? That's why the Course in Miracles was given to us 50 plus years ago, for this time right now, when humanity is facing either its expansion or its contraction. Either humanity is going to descend, we're going to kill each other because we're just operating from the dumbest version or part of ourselves, which is the ego, low frequency, low knowledge. Or we are going to shift and question everything and begin to think like God because we begin to know what God knows. That journey is the journey of awakening, the journey of returning to the truth of who we are. It is a coming back to realize that it is all here. So we're cultivating a relationship with the voice for God, which the Course calls the Holy Spirit. You can call it spirit, you can call it whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what you call it. Just call it. Just connect with it. That is what matters. So sentence number 9 says, the symbolism here, again, talking about the tree of knowledge, the symbolism here has been given many interpretations, but you may be sure that any interpretation that sees either God or his creations as capable of destroying their own purpose is an error. We are in the middle of making a big decision, every single one of us. Do you want to know the truth that will set you free? Or are you okay living with the lies that keep you in bondage? And interestingly enough, back when I was in lower frequency, I used to say, sadly enough, but there's nothing sad about that because nobody's going to get destroyed. Every single being is a child of God, powered by a soul that is eternal. The human bodies, yeah, lots of those bodies have been destroyed, millions of them. You know, there are wars that destroyed millions at one time, maybe billions by now, of human physical beings have been destroyed. But the essence of who they are, not a one has been destroyed because it's eternal. What we are doing at this time is deciding, do I want to get to know my eternal self? Well, if I want to know my eternal self, I need to find the source of it. I need to go to the starting point of the source of my eternal self so I can come to know God. If I am not interested in knowing who I am in truth, I am going to block anything that points to the idea that I'm love and that we're all loving. If I'm going to stay believing in this story that somebody that indoctrinated me, told me the truth, and this is what it is, and if I was trained that if I'm this religion, I have to hate those, or if I'm this color, I have to hate those, or if I'm this gender, I have to hate the opposite. If I am going to stand in my righteousness, little r, right, I'm going to defend what I have been indoctrinated with. And yes, I then ate of the tree of knowledge, the knowledge of bullshit that is not going to help anybody. But I will be stuck with that knowledge because the ego defends its story. The ego is vicious. There's a quote in somewhere in the course, and I cannot tell you exactly what it is, but it basically says the ego is suspicious at best, vicious at worst. The ego is very vicious. When we don't understand the ego, it has one intention and one intention only, and that is to defend itself. That is why the Course spends so much time telling us in your defenselessness, your safety lies. When you come to know who you are, you don't need to defend it. And Jesus gave us the quintessential example of not defending yourself. Go ahead, you can crucify me. Put those nails in here, baby. Come on, do it. Because Jesus was showing he is not his body. We are not these physical vessels. We are what powers these vessels. Every one of us, I'm sure, has been to a funeral and you've seen a body there. You saw Uncle Larry laying there, or your grandma or grandpa. They were laying there. Was that body talking to you? Was that body hugging you? Was that body doing anything? It was just laying there, lifeless. It had no life. What is life but the life force that powers that body? When you can begin to separate, Uncle Larry's body that is there in a casket at the funeral home from the essence of Uncle Larry, the essence, the life force that powered Uncle Larry, you are going to be ahead of most of humanity because we want to get to know what is this that powers everything? What is this that animates everything? That is what is life. That is what is eternal. That is what's going to come back as the next version of Uncle Larry. however that shows up. But we have been trained because we ate of the knowledge of the people who are training us. We have been trained to believe, to focus on the body that is temporary and feel bad because it's born and it dies, and we should just, feel so terrible because we're going to die one day. And the thing is, when we are taught that we only have a small amount of time, in some ways it's a good thing because the death experience is a liberation from this solidification of who we think we are as a human. So it's a good thing we do have the death experience so we can get a break. However, we are told that on the other side of that death is hell. It's worse. So instead of having a short amount of time to enjoy our lives, we spend most of that time worried about what's going to happen when we get to the end of it. That is to live in fear. That is to live dead inside. So to come alive inside is to create a relationship with a life force that powers us. And when you know what that life force is, and you know that it comes from God, that it is God expressing itself, and you know who God really is, not the kindergarten version that the Bible gives us, that is just a version of a angry human parental father figure. I swear, whoever wrote about God must have known my father. But it is truly, we have to wake up. We have to grow up. We have to mature out of this insanity. And the only way to do that is to begin to question what you believe you think are right about. We are so wrong, it's not even funny. Pretty much everything is going to get turned upside down. The Course tells us the ego's thought system, it's inside out and upside down. So not only do we have to flip it, we have to open it and undo it to really reveal what it hides. And what it hides is that sacred, precious jewel that you and I are. Every one of us is the magnificent essence of God. We are pure perfection. And not perfection like the world has taught us, a world of knowledge, taught us that the perfection means, you got to have, a woman has to have 36, 24, 36 figures. You got to be like a Barbie doll, or you got to look this way, or your hair has to be this way, or your skin. That is fake perfection. That is made up perfection to have us buy a whole bunch of makeup and surgeries and stuff that is, by all means, if you want to do it, go down that path. Everybody's allowed to do whatever they want to do. But if you want to get to the perfection that God created us as, it is an individualized, unique expression, meaning everyone is perfect because they are a piece of the puzzle that was not meant to be one size fits all. That would be a very boring puzzle if all the sizes, all the pieces just interlock, boom, 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 and it's done. If you've ever done a puzzle, especially if you do it with a little one, it's so much fun trying to figure out where they fit in. And there's so much excitement. My little grandkids call me Abue. It's so much excitement. Abue, I found it. I matched it. That's why we're here in human bodies, is to match, to find the pieces where we match with one another, with the experiences that we do, where you find the right flower to put on your vase, and you find the right mountain to go hiking, and you find the right beach to go swim in. You fit. Oh my gosh, I found it. And the excitement, the joy is in always meeting another perfectly created piece of the puzzle. And we're not here to solve the whole freaking puzzle, but we are here to remember that we are an important piece of it all. But we have eaten of the tree of knowledge that has filled our mind with misinformation. The Course is really clear. We are sorting out right thinking from wrong thinking. Right thinking is to know ourselves and others as God created us, to live from our eternal truth, to let go of everything that is not true, and accept who we are as powerful creators, because every thought is creative, because every thought has the power of God behind it. There is nothing that is not powered by God in this world. And question. get back to where did this nonsense start? Because anything that goes against the truth of God is going to, by its nature, limit the child of God, is going to confine and define a child of God that is not meant to be confined or defined because it was created infinite and free. So we've got to get to the place that we get over ourselves and begin to get curious. What else is there? I cannot possibly know it all. And when we can begin to humble ourselves enough to begin to question our truths, man, that's when this journey gets really super exciting. And I am so thrilled to say that in starting the Awareness Academy, my online school with it's a membership program. I like 35, 40 people now that are members. And even though the majority they came in through the curiosity phase, which means there's no cost for that. I'm going to teach basic Course in Miracles classes there, and you can comment. There's no cost whatsoever because I want people to begin to know the truth and just be in a community where they can hear, where we can talk with each other. Hopefully, a few people have posted. Jamie, thank you for putting your post in there. And Susie, you made a post too. So I appreciate anybody let's start engaging because I want to create a space where we're talking about the truth of who we are. And so it's a lot of fun. And of course, then there are two pathways. The foundation is about building a foundation. We go into more advanced Course in Miracles classes. We go a lot deeper. And you've got to think about the journey that we're on. The spiritual journey is like grades in school. Somebody who's coming in kindergarten, you can't be teaching them algebra. They don't even know numbers. So in curiosity, we focus on the basics. In the foundations path, we're becoming solidly aware of what the ego is so that we know what is blocking the truth of who you are. In the mastery path, we're talking woo-woo stuff there. I mean, it gets really out there, but that's because that's the mind is already clear. The pathway has been clear to be able to have those kind of conversations. And of course, that includes coaching because we want to make it practical. We don't want to leave it at the woo-woo level in the head. That's happens already out in the world enough. We want to come in and integrate it and know it in every fiber of our being so that we can walk the talk, so we can be in this world but not be of it. So with that, we're going to complete. So again, this is episode 199. Oh my gosh, we've been doing this for so long. Thank you, God, for this incredible opportunity. Does anybody have anything you want to share before we complete? Otherwise, we'll be here next Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern time, and see what else shows up. Love to you too, sweetie. All right. Nobody's going to unmute. Then we will see you guys next time. Love you. Bye, everybody.